Kia ora. Give me 2 seconds, get my things out. Tēnā rā tātou katoa, tēnei te mihina nei kia tātou kua hui mai nei I te rā nei, humihi tuatahi, kia eo mata naro nāna te kore nāna te pō, kia rani nui e tu iho nei, kia papatua nuku e tā kato ake nei, tēnā kōrua, humihi hoki ki tā kōrua uri, tā mātou atua. He mihi hoki ki te whare nei, te herina waka, ki e tū mai nei, he mihi ki ngā mana whenua o te rohe nei, ngā ahi kā te Aotearoa, kurua ko Ngāti Toa Rangatira, kei te mihi, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. Ko waiau e tuake nei, ko Lani, Rotzler Purewa tōku ingoa, huri tēnei no Nai Tūhoi, no Ngātiawa hoki, no te Schwarzwald, Germany hoki, I te whakau I reira. I currently live in Koronui, Stokes Valley, in Lower Hutt, if anybody knows where that is. Hutt Valley represent. And I have the massive privilege of speaking with you today, so stoked to be here. And yeah, really just feeling blessed to share about the awesome work that I and my colleagues all across the motu get to do. Sometimes I jibble in my 2 languages, so if you don't know a kupu that I've used, I'm trying to translate everything, but maybe jot it down and ask me in the end. I'm really passionate about growing food, restoring native forests, deepening my understanding of mātauranga Māori, the ancestral knowledge of our ancestors and the ways in which these overlap. Today, I thought I'd centre my kōrero, my talk about the importance of Indigenous voices in leading climate crisis responses. And in Aotearoa, that means Te Ao Māori, the Māori world. I believe that this holds a solution to so many of the challenges we face today: climate injustice, environmental degradation, disconnectedness from our natural world. And I also obviously want to talk about Parakore and the incredible work my colleagues get to do, my role in supporting marae, kōhanga reo, Māori kindergartens, and kura is just one of the many roles across Aotearoa in the different regions that do the same thing. My colleagues are involved in so many amazing projects, from supporting sewing groups that utilise fabric steamed to go to landfill, helping early childhood education centres transition to reusable nappies, supporting wahine to use reusable period products, list goes on. But in essence, what we do is we advocate for a world without waste from a Māori worldview. What is important about that? What is so significant about a Māori worldview or an Indigenous worldview? To me, it's about the way that we philosophically place ourselves in relation to the natural world. Where do we see ourselves in relation to nature? What is nature and where do we find it? Those were some of the questions posed to me when I was sitting in a geography class up at Kelvin campus at Vic a couple of years ago, trying to chip away at my undergrad degree. Geography class, what is nature? And several of my classmates began discussing, it's our parks, or it's the beach, or it's nature is at Zealandia. And I found myself in a bit of a heated discussion in that tutorial with a classmate, because I was adamant that this pen was as much a part of nature as any tree or river would be, and he found it unfathomable to recognise that this pen could be connected to nature because it was man-made. But to me, it's clear when I look at this, like, yes, it's made out of plastic, but where does plastic come from? It's made from oil. Where does oil come from? It's extracted from Papawhakaritorito, who is nature herself. And it's that idea in our head that, we live in a concrete jungle and we're so separate from nature that I think is deeply, deeply damaging, and sits at the root cause of so many challenges we face today. I grew up in Germany. I am German, which is about as European as it gets. And it's just a fact that Western and European philosophical thought places the human at the top of the food chain above nature. In Western thought, nature is either a resource that is used for humans to use, or it's a dark, scary forest with witches and wolves outside of the town walls, and you best not go there at night time. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my bicultural upbringing, being German and Māori, it's that the Western worldview and the Māori worldview are pretty much on opposite ends of the spectrum. This is Rangi above and Papawhakaritorito below. If you've grown up in Aotearoa, I'm sure you're very familiar with them. But in Te Ao Māori, we know through our whakapapa, through our genealogy, that we as a human species are as much a part of nature as whales, birds, and the tōtara tree. Through our whakapapa, through our genealogy, we can trace back that connection to the ancestral world. In the creation story, you know, stories shape so much of our world. Stories shape the way, what we value and the way we move through the world and what we do. And in Te Ao Māori, we believe that there was, in the beginning of the world, there was te kore and the nothingness, but also the infinite potential. And out of that moment became the universe. And to me, I kind of draw similarities to how people describe the Big Bang. And several generations after te kore, many stages in between, eventually became the creation of Rangi Nui and Papawhakaritorito, Sky Father and Earth Mother. And from those two became all of the world that we see around us. Their children are Tangaroa and Hinemoana, the deities of the ocean and the waters, Tāwhiri Mātea, the deities of the wind, and Tāne, the forests, and Hineahuone, the soil. And that next generation, all of their children, they created the birds, the whales, and all living things that we see around us on Earth today. And to me, these are not simply myths and legends. Pūrākau, ancient stories, pūrākau, are powerful tools that carry mātauranga, ancestral knowledge and teachings. Sorry, nasty flu, still hanging around. You're probably all too familiar with the most recent warnings in the IPCC report. I don't need to go into detail. Your guys' generation is so onto it and you hear it all the time. But just to trigger you a little bit, we've got extreme weather warnings, flooding, drought, wildfires, sea level rise, and biodiversity loss, not to mention all the other complex damaging practices that we inflict on Papawhakaritorito, like our plastic pollution. And what is the cause of this? What is the cause of the climate crisis? When scientists identify the causes, they very quickly point our attention to the mining and burning of fossil fuels and carbon dioxide emissions. But those symptoms are so much more complex than just that. And the causes are not simply human activity. It's the, hold on, I worded this real smart as I wrote this, hold on. The causes are not simply human activity, but the values driving those human activities. It's the values that unfortunately our entire globe has inherited through colonialism, capitalism and capitalism. And those values have their roots in Europe. Values that place the human above nature and think of nature as a resource to exploit. It's also so important to acknowledge that it's the powerful and the wealthy that are beating our planet into submission for the pursuit of individual wealth and unbridled consumption. And that's why our world so desperately needs to listen to Indigenous voices. Because the Indigenous world offers an antidote to those damaging practices. Indigenous people live close to the land and understand her deeply. Indigenous people are not only going to be disproportionately affected by the climate crisis, but also have contributed the least to this issue, especially when we think of our cousins in the Pacific, you know, in islands like Tokelau, who is one of the fastest grounding island nations. There's one incredible statistic, especially that to me so clearly outlines the importance of the presence of Indigenous voices, and that is that Indigenous people make up less than 5% of the global population of all people, but we hold 80% of the world's biodiversity, which is just incredible because we occupy the forests, the deserts, the grasslands, and the marine environments, and we have done for thousands of years. And we've observed them intimately, and we've seen the changes happening because there, you know, so many Indigenous communities are reliant on those spaces for their food source. In Aotearoa, our Indigenous worldview is Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview, and we're so lucky that Te Reo Māori and Te Ao Māori is currently undergoing a massive renaissance in this country, and that our ancestors have resisted and fought for the continuation of our culture, language, and values so that all people that call Aotearoa home can learn about that today. Who's heard of the term kaitiaki? Kaitiaki. What do we reckon? What does it mean? Guardian, or steward. Steward is another word often used. And while that's absolutely correct, I think it's very difficult to translate concepts. You know, that's an entire concept in our worldview with just one word. So kaitiakitanga to me connects us to those deities, those gods that I spoke of earlier. Those gods are each of them kaitiaki of their domain, tāne of the forest, tangaroa of the ocean. And our tupuna, our ancestors, deeply understood that in that whakapapa genealogy that started with Te Kore, then came Papa Tuanuku, the human species are the last created. We come after the birds and after the mountains and after the whales. We know that we are the taina, the younger sibling. And so we are... We know that our well-being as the younger sibling is intimately connected to the well-being of our tuakana, our elder siblings, the rivers, mountains, seas, and soils. And when we call ourselves kaitiaki, it's not in stewardship over a piece of land because we own it, but rather we are protecting that land because we care for that land because the land cares for us. And we know that if the land is not well, neither are we. And currently, our land is really, really unwell. And we need to adapt values that connect us to these issues. And that's what we do at Parakore when we support Māori communities to better care for Papa Tuanuku. We provide support, and that looks different for every marae, kura, and kōhanga. And we support them to take the lead in transitioning to a less wasteful future and to advocate for a systems change from a Māori worldview. We are a by Māori for Māori initiative, and I think that's radical as. Up here, I've just tucked some photos of our tupuna who were just so onto it. Especially I wanted to give a shout out to all Maroro Gardens in Vogeltown today, here in our city by Ngāti Te Whiti and Ngāti Haumia. I'm not too sure when those gardens existed, but unfortunately I also don't have a photo. Those gardens are all from lots of different places. That one in the middle is from the Wairawaka. That one there is in Anoda Bay, but they existed everywhere because our tupuna understood not only to care for the land, but to care for each other and to feed ourselves. yeah, I just put that up there because I think it's interesting, and it's important for us to recognise that in our city, you know, that's the history of our city, right, where we stand today. Don't trash Papa Tuanaku because we need her. Parakore. At Parakore, our vision is oranga taiao, oranga marae, well-being of our environment, well-being of our marae, our community centres, and that will lead to oranga whānau, the well-being of our families, through, like I mentioned earlier, the passing on of mātauranga ancestral knowledge and the uplifting of a Māori worldview for a world without waste. That's our kaupapa haere, Jackie Forbes there on the second to the right in 2009. So, you know, we've been going for a long, long time, and I think up until recently been doing work without much monetary support, which is kind of happening now because I think central government is realising what a gem this initiative is. But yeah, Koihākina Marae and Whaingaroa in 2009. Anybody been to Raglan? Anybody been to Extreme Zero Waste or heard about Extreme Zero Waste? Yeah, so they're like our big bros. They kind of help support what we do. Do you want to share a bit about Raglan, about Extreme Zero Waste? Got one of those cubes? What do you know about Extreme Zero Waste? If you want to, you don't have to.
I grew up in Hamilton, so I went to Raglan a lot. They've got some really, really cool, I guess, like systems in place to minimise their waste. They've got way better, like, composting facilities and stuff like that. Like, they're actually collecting like household compost, yes, and it's all much more kind of like circular.
Yes.
And then the best part, well, it's not the best part, but is the op shop that they have there as well. They like go through all their waste and I guess like save things that have been thrown away and then sell it. And it's, yeah, it's
a magical place.
It's, yeah.
Never mind surfing, go to Raglan to see Extreme Zero Waste.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, it's really simple, you know, they don't have massive flash infrastructure. A lot of what their systems are just people power. I'm not too sure, I think it's maybe 15 years ago, before they started Extreme Zero Waste, they had a really toxic landfill. You know about leachate, all the disgusting shit that comes when we throw all of our rubbish in one hole and just expect it to be okay, was leaching into that beautiful harbour that they have in Raglan. And they did many tests of that harbour and the life that existed, and it was close to lifeless. I think it was like they saw one fish every 8 hours. They laid that to rest. They've done a whole bunch of planting. They redesigned the entire system where they have, I think it's like 80 to 90% diversion from landfill. That is incredible. I don't think anybody else can say, any other landfill can say that. And so, you know, that's the sort of circular systems that we are advocating for at a higher level. Some of my colleagues do. I kind of do more on the groundwork. Yeah, actually visiting marae, visiting kindergartens, going, hey, do you know about recycling and what that looks like? You know, different regions is actually really complex. So we help them navigate the different kind of systems that all of our regions have across Aotearoa. This is about, we can kind of have a sign-up system. So, you know, our reach is broad and wide, and our work is meaningful and impactful because it's not somebody else coming into that community going, this is what you need to do. We're going, hey, you know we are all tamariki of rangi and papa, and what do we need to, what can we support you with so that we can make some changes? These stats are a little bit old, so, you know, I would say there's more than 368 marae that we've signed up, 455,000 tonnes of waste. Is that number? No, it's not. Let's skip that. Yeah, that's Parakore. what's really cool about my work at Parakore is that we actually have given quite a lot of freedom in the way that we conduct our work, and my personal passion project is to grow food, and so I focus on that. I focus on diverting green waste from landfill for Aotearoa, and I try and instill, try and help people recognize that it's not like some yucky thing that you shove in your rubbish and it goes stink in your rubbish and goes to landfill, that actually our garden needs it, and it's such a valuable resource to make your own compost. That's my auntie in the one from the left there, and it's so, I'm just so grateful that, like, I call this my work. I get to hang out with my auntie and plant silver beet and make sure that she had fresh tomatoes and fresh silver beet all summer long. So, you know, we do quite small gardens, just like 1 square metre. That second one there is the Bro Kitene with a project that I'm working with kōhanga order and a big cul-de-sac. You know, there's maybe, I would say maybe like 10 to 15 square metres of garden space there. And just the way it's changed that little community. He was telling me the other day, a police officer came and was found like a burnt out car in the cul-de-sac, and she was trying to question him about it, but instead they ended up talking about the garden and what a beautiful space it is. So we're literally, you know, changing the way that communities like that are perceived as well. And the one on the right there is Daima and her moko at Kaumātua Flats, like Te Aotearoa Kaumātua Flats in Wainuyamata. Bunch of our elderly living there, and so they've got raised beds, and I just kind of hang out and help them set up their composting systems, tweak any problems, drop off random resources and seedlings that I'm raising, and get to hang out with them. This is my absolute passion project at Tata College. It looks quite different there. That field, we've pretty much been said by the principal, cool, go ahead, is 450 square metres. That was a little while ago, so we've just got a budget approved, and we've bought a big tunnel house, a greenhouse, and fruit trees for our orchard, and I'm there every Tuesday with students, just pottering away. But yeah, hopefully going to be pumping heaps of clay by springtime. One of the other things we've done there is clean the stream that runs right next to the garden, kind of, if you look on that right one at the back there, pulled out a bunch of rubbish that you see in the middle there, and replanted watercress, which, like, from Purewa with our students, is like one green that is just so delicious and we love to eat. Yum, boil up. And to me, this is the solution, is coming to talk to you guys and knowing that yous are already, you know, thinking ahead, what can we do, where can we be better? Every Tuesday when I hang out with them, my heart is just full, and I know that we'll get there, you know. We're removing invasive species and we're replanting natives. That's the girls there doing a soil test to make sure we're not growing food in contaminated soil before we grow our corn. Yeah, it's in our rangatahi and our young people. That's where the solutions lie. That's some white corn that we grew, which is really yummy for rotten corn, if you're into that, if anybody's had that. This was a slide from another talk that I gave a while ago, so it's a little bit random, but yeah, to encourage economics of reciprocity, and to support local initiatives that go beyond KPIs, because yes, we have to do reporting, but honestly, the gems that come out of the work that I get to do are immeasurable, to empower whakaaro Māori and to make sure that we pay our growers, because to me, there is no more important work to be done currently. Again, that stat for any of you who've missed it, 5% of the world's population, and we hold 80% of the world's biodiversity. That is crazy. That is amazing. Just a couple of terms I wanted to talk about, you know, tangata whenua. It's not just in our stories and in our creation stories that connect us to our land. It's in our songs, it's in our language, it's everywhere. So the term tangata whenua, meaning Indigenous people, Māori, people of the land. Whenua itself is the placenta that when we give birth, we return the placenta to the land. It's that cyclical relationship. A term that I really, really love, mate mate a one. I don't know if it's specifically a Tūpoi saying, correct me if you know otherwise, but mate mate means death, a one meaning the soil. And to me, mate mate a one is the undying love that we have for our soil, because we know that Hine Ahuone, the first woman, our deity of the soil, you know, she's not only our creatress, but she's also where we return when we die. We turn to soil. And I also wanted to leave you with words of our beautiful Pāmoana Jackson, who's been a personal hero of mine, influenced my life in many, many ways, even though I never had the privilege of meeting him. But the bro Tikawa Rob, if you know him, he's quite famous. He's my colleague, posted this on the gram the other day and I thought I should share it. The taking away of the land from people who live as people of the land, tangata whenua, is not simply land loss, it's an ongoing rupture that fractures the essential spiritual and practical ties to identity and belonging. Ultimately, I'd like to advocate for the empowerment of whakaaro Māori and mātauranga Māori, for adequate funding for initiatives that are by Māori, for Māori, that are already doing the mahi in this space, because what's good for tangata whenua brings abundance for all of Aotearoa, for all people that call Aotearoa home. I really hope that the kōrero I shared with you today got you thinking on some of the reasons why we've found ourselves in the climate crisis. And I hope that you see the beauty, importance and value of uplifting Indigenous voices in the climate crisis responses. As a human species, we are in desperate need of healing, and we need to reevaluate the values that have shaped this world this far and gotten us into this mess. And we need to replace those values of greed with those of care and balance between all living things. And to me, that's Te Ao Māori, and the knowledge of my ancestors does exactly that. Thank you so much. Please ask me questions or discussions, or maybe grab my email and later, and we can yarn some more if you have any projects you want to chat about. But yeah, if you've got any questions, there's a cube over there. No questions?
No questions. Here we go.
Oh, better catch it. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So did you find yourself in this line of work by chance, or did you know you were meant for it, or like how'd you get into what you're doing?
It's a really good question. I dropped out of uni during lockdown. Don't follow my advice. Education's really, really important, but also education happens in so many different ways. I don't need to go to university to learn stuff. And I started volunteering at a place called Community Project. If you're from around Pōneke, you might know them. They do urban farming, and I was working in hospo, and I became the community cafe manager. And from that, I just started hanging out with the growers at that project. And one day, Tikawa walked in and had a coffee. The bro that works at Pare, he's like, yeah, we have a job going. And I love being from the Hutt Valley and living out there. And I think they just, yeah, people talk shit about us, but we're actually so magical. I think, just applied for the job and got there, and have just been addicted to learning about soil and learning about growing food. Yeah, just follow your nose. There's a path laid out for all of us, and if your intentions are right, like the right things will come to you. I think that's kind of what happened.
Thank you.
Any other partai? Oh.
Oh, almost.
It's okay, they've got cushions on them. Kia ora.
Here we are in Aotearoa, Taranaki whānau. I ngā wā mua I ako au ki te Pare grandpa house.
Oh, sure. Oh my goodness. You're me. Oh, yeah. Cool.
So you're a lot older than me, we went to the same school.
True.
But I just wanted to say, kia ora motu, kōrero he whakaaro whai he kōrero whai, he mahi whai. Thank you so much. I have no question. I just thought, awesome kōrero.
Oh, nā mihi aloha. Cool. He tino hōnore tēnei ki a hau ki te kōrero kia tātou I konei. Cool. Te oi tō reo, hoki. Yeah.
Do you have like any future plans for like the next sort of 10 years?
I'm currently just prepping for spring because I'm a grower and all I have on my mind is veggies. But yeah, that garden at Taita College is like, I think my passion project. Me and my best friend are doing that, Tina, and my uncle Simon, he's the teacher there. So, you know, it's like, it's not something that I'm hanging around for a year and then leaving because I'm like the one establishing that. It's different to the projects where I go and help out. I'm like leading this one, and, you know, soil takes a while to build and to regenerate, especially where they've been like spraying shit for many, many years. So I think, that is the focus, you know, is to grow abundance in that space. And like I've fully thrown myself in the deep end. I've never really managed a farm or, you know, growing space that big. So wish me luck. Yeah, would be cool.
I just wanted to ask, where could we possibly contact you if we wanted to?
Yeah, cool. Follow us on the gram at Pare, and the Taita College project is under FTW Feed the Whānau on Instagram. I kind of don't talk about it as like Taita College because we kind of trying to keep it on the down low, but I've said Taita College so often now that it's like I probably know where to go. But yeah, definitely flick us a message if you have a partai or if you have projects. I love to support or come hang out.
Back for another go. Ooh, pressure's on for the return throw now.
What's your favorite vegetable?
Oh, such a good question. Hold on, can I show you? Can I show you this? Wait. These are all veggies that I grew. That's a yellow beetroot, which is really yummy. They're from seedlings from Kaisako. Do you guys know Kaisako? You guys have to go there. It's the most magical place. I do really love a kamo with a bit of butter and salt. But I think corn is yum. It's like lollies from the garden. What's your favorite vegetable?
I'm going to put on the spot. I'm going to go away.
A what?
I don't want to say a fruit. I don't want to say a fruit. Cucumber? Is that count?
Cucumber is a vegetable, I think, yeah.
Come on, let's go.
Oh.
All right. Oh, one more.
I was just going to ask if you have any tips for like favorite vegetables to grow during winter, because I know at the moment in Wellington it's so windy, that kind of thing.
Can you take your mask off? I have really bad hearing.
Oh, any tips for growing like winter vegetables in windy Wellington?
Windy Wellington, yeah. Try and definitely get them tucked in somewhere with some sort of wind shelter. And like if you kind of, I don't know the month exactly, when does it get freezing? If you like get broccolis and cabbages and things like that in before May. What do you reckon, Liam? In before May, they should be pretty happy and get going. Yeah. Greens, silver beets and that, you know. Yeah, greens, hardy greens. Cool questions, really cool questions.
Although you did say your favourite food was bagels.
Well, I do like bagels, but it's not really very
can't grow
good for
them.
me, is it? Yeah, I'm not about to be growing wheat. It's a little bit outside of my skill set. Hey, thanks for your cool questions, guys. So cool to see some Rapper House crew out here.
Thank you. Round of applause again for Lani. Cool. So it's almost lunchtime, boy. It's going to be lunchtime in a second. Bagels. Yeah, there are bagels. We were just talking about bagels before. It's an inside joke, but we'll be on it. I think that, like, a couple of things to me, like soil is so critical, yeah, because everything that we eat comes out of the soil. So if the soil is rubbish, what you eat is rubbish, which means you become a bit rubbish. So it's like, it's critical to, well, in terms of your you know, if you're going to get sick more easily, you know, just how you operate as a human is all based on what you eat. So if you're eating food out of bad food that's not come out of the soil at all, like a bagel, or, you know, bad food that's come out, or food that's come out of bad soil, it's going to have a big effect on us. So soil is a really big thing. I think 100% right, like connection to nature, connection to community, it's something that in the modern, busy, westernized world is not prioritized. And I think it's